Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Aftershock. I'm Phillip Leyva, joined by Jamon Moore tonight, just the two of us. We have a matchup between Luchi Gonzalez's former team in FC Dallas versus future team in our San Jose Earthquakes. A 1-1 draw. Jamon, I wasn't here for the last conversation after the game against the Colorado Rapids, but I would imagine that there was a lot discussed in terms of the youth, how many minutes they were going to be getting, and the opportunities we would see from them. And in this match, we saw Benji Kikanovic and Cade Cowell both starting in the wing positions with Espinoza starting on the bench. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are in regards to what you wanted to see in terms of those players getting minutes, and overall what your thoughts were in terms of the results of this match.
Yeah, it was fine. I did like getting to see Benji on the right. I think what's great about Benji is the flexibility that you got with him. And regardless of where he's at, he can be the most dangerous player on the field. And I think particularly in the first half, he showed quite a bit of that tonight. When he left, it got a lot more predictable, and that was unfortunate. And I feel like the sub probably should have been to put Benji over on the left and take off Cade, because Cade actually looked really winded by the end of the game.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of huffing and puffing out there. And I felt Benji had a lot more to give. And I think that was a miscalculation. I think they should have sent Benji over to the left and pulled off Cade. Other than that, it was good. Really interesting thing that kind of came up in a text tonight, and I wanted to kind of point this out, is we still have not seen the 5 best attacking players on this team playing together in any game yet this season. Let's just list that out so we're very clear as to who that is. That would be Jeremy, Montero, Cade, Benji, and Espinoza. Those 5.
Right.
So it's like they can't fit all 5 of them onto the field at the same time, because for whatever reason, no one's willing to kind of experiment putting either Benji or even Espinoza into that kind of right half space. And so one of your 5 best players, attacking wise, is always not on the pitch. Now, I guess that's fine at the start of a game, but at the end of the game, particularly in a game where you need a goal, you should be able to find a way to get all 5 of those players on at one time. Like, I want to see it at least once. And, it's kind of a frustrating thing that, the team is kind of set up in this way that you can't get all 5 of them on at one time. And part of it is there's not a large willingness still to experiment. And, even tonight with, Remedi with a yellow card suspension, Yule with a slight knee injury. Mm-hmm. It's bad enough that he couldn't play tonight, but not bad enough it should keep him out probably as early as next week. He probably will be back for the Classico. This is an opportunity to try something, and I feel like they kind of did, but at the same time, like, not really.
Well, one thing I'm wondering here, Jamon, is, and this Daniel Slayton mentioned this on the broadcast, one thing that we could have seen was perhaps Espinoza being pushed into more of a wing back or a back position rather than having him play as a forward, and providing an opportunity for the other guys to stay in those forward positions. Obviously, that could be a defensive liability, but we know that Espinoza has quite the high work rate, and it, as you mentioned, could be something new that they could try and have another attacking option. But I'm also thinking about, we've seen Tanner Beeson kind of shifting between center back and left back, and they have the guys there to play that sort of a system if they wanted to have 5 in the back and kind of adjust the midfield, especially in these cases when you don't have an Eric Remedi, when you don't have a Jackson Yule because of an injury, and you have more of those sorts of options. So I think that ended up being something in this match that probably could have maybe had it been a different avenue that they could have taken against an FC Dallas team, especially. I know that you noticed this throughout the match. FC Dallas was pressing quite a bit. Yep. And the Quakes actually, in my opinion, did pretty well playing out of the press and maintaining possession, but they weren't finding that pass in the attack to create anything that was too dangerous, right? I mean, in fact, the only goal that the Quakes scored tonight was on a penalty kick. So they did have some opportunities early on, but they didn't have, enough chances created, and they didn't create enough danger in front of goal to really impress themselves in the match and create more issues for FC Dallas. And on the other side, I'm curious as to what your take is on how well the the Quakes defended as well. I noticed that, FC Dallas did not start Ferreira tonight. They went with a little bit of a different lineup, so there wasn't that threat necessarily. The goal that FC Dallas scored, some people might look at it as sort of a fluky goal, but the fact of the matter is the Quakes oftentimes allowed FC Dallas to occupy that space in the right back position, right, which has sort of been a weakness. I mean, Carlos Acapo can't get here any sooner and take that position for the Quakes. I'm curious though, Jamon, what your thoughts are in regards to, how they were able to keep FC Dallas off the board with the exception for that one goal, and what's going on there with the Quakes defense in this match against FC Dallas.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag for sure. So look, if you take a quick look at expected goals, you got 1.79 for the Quakes, 106 for FC Dallas. That sounds better than it is because the penalty is like 0.75. Mm-hmm. So it's, you take away the penalty and it's kind of the same both directions. The Quakes got more shots, but the shots that they took were lower quality than the shots that FC Dallas took. And by the way, that's quite normal in MLS for a home team to take more shots and for an away team to take fewer shots, but play more in transition and be able to get a higher kind of XG per shot. It's actually a way to be able to win. And I've written about that before at American Soccer Analysis. So I felt like it very much played out like an MLS, kind of 1-1 draw. There was quite a bit about it. I think the spiciness came in, of course, with the Areola red card. And the fact that the Quakes drew a penalty, which the more I see it, the more soft it looks to me. I'm not going to say that it shouldn't have been called. It probably technically, letter of the law, is a penalty. Mm-hmm. But there has to be some disappointment with not putting the ball in the back of the net, given that the team took 18 shots outside of the penalty tonight.
Yeah.
And it happens. And there's plenty of good shots in there, but at the same time, one kind of does have to wonder, without Espinoza on the pitch, does the team have the ability really to get both a shooter and an assister kind of lined up in the right way, outside of the obvious Ebobisse Montero combination that we were able to see throughout the middle part of the season. Mm-hmm. We actually have seen a little bit less of recently. Montero feels to me like a little bit in a bit of a funk in terms of his creation. That was a concern coming into the season, and he was starting to address that, and now it feels like it's kind of regressed back a bit. Right now, the best creator in the team, has been Benji Kikanovic when he's on the pitch, and Christian Espinoza when he's not. But tonight, Espinoza, I felt, given that he was only asked to go 30 minutes, didn't really attack the goal in the same way that he typically does.
What's interesting is I was thinking about both Espinoza and Montero and their performance and their string of, for Espinoza, what has been a lot of ups this season, a lot of assists. He's been, kind of a creator and a playmaker for the team in his own right. Coming into this season, I would have thought that Espinoza would be the guy that's sort of like hot and cold, and he's been a little bit more maintaining his play and his effectiveness for the team, whereas I kind of feel like Montero was on the opposite end, and we're kind of seeing Montero regress at times, and we're seeing his you can almost see like his mood and his body language shift from where it was early on in the season, where there was this hopefulness, to where we were a couple weeks ago with the Quakes perhaps having an opportunity to make the playoffs, even though there was a very small chance that they would actually do it. We were seeing some good play from the team, to now where they're not in the playoffs. And I mean, I don't want to say that Montero is simply going out there and just putting in his time, but I'm not necessarily seeing the same fire that I saw earlier on in the season when the Quakes were kind of like making that playoff push, when we had the switch from Matias Almeida to Alex Covelo. But to go back to Espinoza again, I just feel that, with every opportunity that the Quakes have, considering how he's played this season, he's got to be on the pitch. And I think they have a really great opportunity right now to be playing Espinoza, who has been effective throughout the season, with some of these younger guys, whether it's Nico Chikaris playing in the midfield and trying to, work out some of that chemistry with them, whether it's having him, again, continuing to play with Jeremy Ebobisse, getting Ebobisse's goal tallies up there, building that confidence as they go into the offseason and starting, the following the 2023 season and continuing to build that chemistry. I know one thing for sure, though, that I've picked up on from, where the season started between Jeremy Ebobisse and Jamiro Montero and where we are now. I think we have a very solid pairing with the two of them. Their chemistry has most certainly developed, and this is another thing I wanted to bring up tonight that I think is really important. The Quakes now have like a strong, steady, number 9 that we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, just imagine if Jeremy Ebobisse would have had a little bit more overlap with Chris Wondolowski and how effective some of, earlier on in the Matias Almeida days, how that could have gone for this team, seeing those two working together. Because really what I think Wondolowski often needed was a player like Jeremy Ebobisse, just a straight up number 9. And the other benefit to that for, Ebobisse, and considering how he's playing, is he's finally getting that opportunity to play in the position in which he is most effective. There was an article on MLSsoccer.com written by Matt Doyle, and he talks about some things to take away from the Quakes this season, and he spent a lot of time discussing Jeremy Ebobisse and how really for about 5 seasons the Portland Timbers deployed him as a winger. He didn't really have an opportunity to just play as a straight 9 consistently, and he had been saying, since 2017 that Ebobisse is a player who could score 15 or more goals a season, and now we're finally seeing it. And so just, a point of optimism for me going into next season is seeing how well Montero has built that relationship with Ebobisse. But I also want to see that, again, more with Espinoza and some of these younger guys who are just starting to get their minutes. Benji Kikanovic, obviously, and I think he's already showing that capability. Early on in the match, he combined well with Cade Cowell. We've seen him do it with Ebobisse and the times that he's gotten minutes throughout the season, but also getting to see Nico Chikaris. And hopefully, if Jackson Yueill is going to continue to be a part of this team, seeing that to continue to develop as well. Because I would think if you keep this core, there's a lot of potential for this team. And especially with, Rodriguez being in the back line, with Akapo being in the back line next year, there's a lot to look forward to for this team. But, the consistency is going to have to be there going into the next season.
Yeah, he's, look, Ebobisse, 16 goals this season, 14 of them that were non-penalties. He's only had 2 that were penalties, and obviously got the penalty tonight. Wando for years, he's got like 4 seasons, still with more goals than Ebobisse. But at the same time, Wando also took all the penalties. So a lot of those seasons have a number of penalties. Alex Covelo is joining us now. Let's pick that conversation back up on the other side.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. Following the 1-1 draw with FC Dallas, we are joined by interim head coach Alex Covelo. Let's jump right into questions. Jamon, I think there you go. Jamon, go ahead and ask the first question.
Unmuted.
Sorry about that. Hey, Coach. 1-1 draw tonight. Some good things. Put out a different lineup where you got a bit of rest for Christian Espinoza tonight. It looked like Benji was very lively over there on the right-hand side and was bringing a lot of energy to that. How did you feel the attack looked tonight without Jackson Yueill and without Espinoza starting up on the right? Thank you.
Muted.
Thank you, Jamon. Well, I think that we look well. The guys step up. I think that everybody can have a chance to play and show the level that they have. I think that we play against good Dallas. It's true that they made rotations. We had some players that we couldn't have, like Eric Remedi and Jackson Yueill, and we rotate Christian Espinoza. But Dallas is still one of the best teams who plays a good soccer here in the league. And I think that we were good. I think that the team is defending every day a little bit better. A part of that strange episode against Cincinnati, I think that we have very good moments with ball, and what we miss is to create a little bit more at the end, arriving to the box. But in general, the guys that step up today, they did very well.
Thank you, Alex. Let's go to Michael Roberson. Michael, do you have a question? All right, let's go to Marko Ukalovic.
Hey, Alex, thanks for taking time to talk to us tonight. They go down with the red card late in the match, and I know you try to get more offensive with the substitutions you did there. Is it disappointing that you guys weren't able to get that game-winning goal despite them being down 10 men, or excuse me, 1 man with the only playing with 10 guys? Sorry.
Yeah, obviously Dallas drop a little bit the line, and then they try to create some density. We were there trying to find those spaces, and was not possible at the end. Obviously, you have this feeling that is a little bit disappointing, or you want to call it like that. No? In general, we had a good performance. We missed to finalize the product. That's what we miss.
Thank you, Alex. Let's go to Paula Maruri.
Muy buenas noches, Alex. Para hacer un poco seguimiento a la película de Marco, a la pregunta, ¿cómo se maneja la consistencia de la ejecución del plan de juego, especialmente la segunda parte, cuando Dallas queda con 10 jugadores? Y también me gustaría hablar del próximo juego que viene, el clásico, donde estará Chicharito, ¿no? Visitándonos. Gracias.
Gracias. Bueno, intentar meter al equipo rival en su área, ¿no? También hemos dejado a Gregus y hemos incorporado a Nico para tratar de tener más jugadores ahí arriba junto a Yamiro y combinar, porque ellos iban a meter atrás y combinar un poquito en corto para o entrar por dentro o salir por fuera con Cristian, ¿no? Cuando ha entrado. Por la derecha hemos generado, por la izquierda no ha habido mucho cross y nos ha faltado llegar al área. Nos ha faltado estar en el área para finalizar. Y lógicamente las hemos tenido. Creo que la primera parte hemos tenido un poste, luego hemos tenido aproximaciones. Eso referente a la primera pregunta. Perdona, Paula, había otra ya detrás.
Claro,
Stanford.
sí.
Bueno, Stanford.
También la de Stanford.
Sí, para nosotros Stanford es un partido especial. Da igual el momento de la temporada que sea, da igual la clasificación. Para nosotros Stanford es algo diferente y vamos a prepararlo de la mejor manera para afrontar el partido de la mejor manera contra un rival que tiene calidad en su plantel.
Thank you, Alex. Let's try Michael Roberson again.
All right. How you doing, Coach? The last time I talked to you, it was after the announcement of the new coach, and we talked about how the season would play out. Now we know there's no playoffs. What is the scenario now with the big game coming up next week too? So how does the season play out now that there's no playoffs?
Well, our approach is to finalize well the season, having a good performance and try to win all the games that we have. And the first one that we have to approach is the Cali Clásico, which is even more special than the rest. So we have to face it in the same way, trying to finalize as better as possible.
Thank you, Alex. Our final question comes from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hi, Coach. Can you give a quick update on Jackson Ewell and if you think he'll be available for the Cali Classico? How bad is his knee injury? And secondly, with Cade Cowell getting a number of games in this part of the season where he wasn't in the midseason, what is it that you're looking for him to really kind of grow on in these opportunities that he's getting? And coming into next season as a young player, an 18-year-old player, what is it that you think, you'd like to see him focus on in order to keep improving as a professional player? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to
Muted.
start with the second one. I think that Cade Cowell, we were talking at the beginning, I think that Cade Cowell is improving a lot one of his defensively aspects. He's helping much more the team. He's helping much more the organization, even if he needs to keep working on that. He's improving about when we are defending what kind of spaces he needs to cover, in order to control his direct mark, and also the space that he has behind. And with ball, he still is improving those little touches when he has to cut inside or what kind of space he needs to occupy, depending on the midfielder and the fullback. So he's improving step by step. He's improving those aspects. and is what we wanted. On the other hand, also bench is doing a good job, so we are going to find the balance between them, and bench is still young too. In relation with Jackson Jewell, Jackson has a bone bruise, so it's like he had a little bit edema in one part of the, I think it's the tibia or I think it's the tibia. So we are waiting for him to reabsorb that injury in his bone and see if he can be ready for Stanford. He's an important player, he's the captain, so hopefully we can recover him.
All right, thank you very much, Alex.
So
Okay, guys, we will be joined by Jeremy Ebobisse as soon as he's ready. Please let me know if you have a question. Thank you.
Jeremy Ebobisse is going to be joining us soon. Excellent. So the first thing, just want to restate quickly the injury to Jackson Jewell. According to Alex Covelo, this is a bone bruise in his tibia. So this is something that he's dealing with. I have no idea what the recovery time is on something like that. Jamon, I don't know if you have insight on that, but
I don't. And if anything, it sounds like it's a little bit, it's going to almost be a day-to-day thing to see how it improves.
Exactly.
Those things tend to be less obvious as to what the time's going to be.
But what I found really interesting, I'm glad that we got the information about Jackson Jewell, so we all have an idea about what his timetable looks like. But his response to Cade Cowell and the areas in which he thinks he needs to develop, and he was very clear about the areas in which he thought that Cade Cowell was improving, and one of them is like his play as a teammate, his role in the team, going back and making the right choices in terms of when the team is defending, what kind of space is he going to be occupying, rather than just being somebody who is going to try to get past the defenders when they're springing an attack, finding other ways to get involved in the defending and helping the team in that aspect. It kind of sounds like, Jamon, that something that he's picking up on with Cade is the more of the technical stuff, which at 18 years old is going to be very difficult for any player in MLS, with very few exceptions. I remember a time in this league when the newest players, the rookie players, if you would, were coming out of college. We didn't see a lot of 18-year-old players coming up against, guys who've been playing in the league, who've been playing at a professional level for so many years. So just to kind of go back on what we were talking about earlier this season, Jamon, and like allowing some space for Cade Cowell to continue to develop, and that he has the space.
All right.
Jeremy
Ebobisse's
Ebobisse's on.
We are now joined by Jeremy Ebobisse. Let's go ahead and begin with Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hi, Jeremy. Congrats on the goal tonight. The team managed quite a few shots, but weren't able to put in a goal in open play. And you had some changes without Jackson in there and without Espinoza starting. How do you feel that the group that was out there tonight did on the attacking side of the ball? Thank you.
Muted.
I think the group put themselves in good spots. Thought there were some good moments where we exploited spaces on counterattacks, working from the width into the middle, and then trying to get to the other side of the field. Ultimately, our final decisions probably let us down a little bit, prevented some more clear-cut chances. Some of the counter pressing that we had and the decision that we made as we picked up the ball was probably not where I and the rest of the front line want it to be. But with that, we're building. Given where we are at this stage of the season, you're always building towards something, and to see the way that we pressured a team fighting for playoffs and how we commanded the play at times at home. I think that was encouraging, and we need to take some comfort in that as we strive for perfection in the final third.
Thank you, Jabo. Let's go to Michael Roberson.
All right, Jeremy, you were tied for third for most goals in the season for the Quakes, and you're one of the top scorers in the MLS. Now, does that kind of go by the wayside when you are eliminated from the playoffs? Do you look at more of the team scenario, or you also look at the individual success that you've had so far this year?
Yeah, I do think that once you're eliminated from the playoffs, or when you're not fighting for a competitive position on the table, stats like those mean less to other people. I think at times I maybe downplay that as well. But it's important to keep it in perspective that as an attack, we are and we have done some positive things in order to get myself in front of goal and give me chances to execute. And frankly, it shouldn't be discounted. The stats speak for themselves amongst myself and the rest of the guys who have put up some pretty enormous stats.
Thank you, Jabo. We'll take 3 more questions, starting with Marko Ukalovic.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks for taking some time to talk to us. How was it like playing along with the 2 young guns next to you, and Cade and Benji? It seemed like, their speed, their playmaking abilities was kind of able to open up some lanes for you. How did you feel just playing with those guys aside you up front like that?
Yeah, those are talented guys that are at different stages in their careers relative to each other and relative to myself. But what I see in them at their ages, and when I compare it to where I was at, it gives me a lot of optimism for where they can take their careers. But it's on them to really make sure that they're taking advantage of every situation that they get in order to maximize the opportunities and ultimately their potential. Because we've seen throughout different phases of this year what Cade can bring in last year, and we've seen what Benji can bring both this and last year, and now it's up to them to really fight and hold it down and keep pushing, because as attackers, you're going to be judged by goals and assists, and that's something I try to hammer into their heads, not so that they become selfish in the final third and make plays that are anti-team, but just so that they know that the next level of their progression involves being clinical on a regular basis, and they both have that in them. So hopefully I can help them achieve that, and they continue to push me and push the other guys on the team to bigger heights.
Thank you, Jeremy. This question comes from Ted Ramey. He asks, next week will be your first California Classico at Stanford Stadium. What have you heard about the match from your teammates, and are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I heard it's the Shea Salinas game, so hopefully the memories that I hear about his fun times there can continue for all of us. I'm expecting a rowdy crowd, and anytime that you play against an LA team, you want to show them who's boss. So it doesn't matter what the standings look like, doesn't matter where they're at. We beat them away. We know that they're going to want to beat us here. They're in a tough spot in the playoff race, so we're going to come correct and look to put on a show.
Thank you. One final question from Paula Maruri.
Good evening. I would like to talk about the moment of the penalty. How was your concentration? What was going through your mind? And let's talk about the Clásico. You're going to be playing against Chicharito. Thank you.
Yeah, I think when it comes to penalties, typically Christian Espinosa is in the game, and he's the PK taker. And anytime we have a PK, I respect that. I want him to take those PKs, get goals, continue to build confidence, because we all know what hitting the back of the net feels like for anyone. But knowing that he was on the bench at the time, I felt like it was kind of my responsibility to step up as a striker, something that I've done previously in the season when he wasn't on the field. So, yeah, it's a penalty. You're going to make hopefully most of them, if not all, but you can't go up there with the fear of missing. So I just try and calm down, take deep breaths, and really make sure that I'm in control of my movements. And if I do that, then hopefully more chances than not, it's going to go in the back of the net. And yeah, when you talk about the Cali Classico and lining up against guys like Chicharito, I think it's exciting for the environment, for the fans, but as players, it doesn't really matter who's on the other side of the field. It doesn't matter their history, and with all due respect, we all know the amazing career he's had, but we're on the same field and we have the same goal, which is to win the game, to impose ourselves. And I'm not going to look at him any different than I look at anyone else on the field.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeremy, and congrats on the goal tonight.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, guys, we will see you midweek, or we'll see you Saturday from Stanford. Thank you.
Okay, so I love that Jabo takes the question on Chicharito because he very easily could have avoided that if he wanted to, but you know, he's kind enough to answer that question. It seemed like Paulo really wanted to get some information about that. I think she posed a question to Alex Covelo as well. Didn't get quite as much out of Alex, so it was cool to hear that from Jabo. Okay, before we continue, Jamin, I wanted to really quickly invite anybody who's in the YouTube chat tonight, our friends. If you have any questions for us for the show before we get on out of here, we'd love to have you pose them and we'd love to talk about it. Jamin, I'm going to kick it back over to you because I've already taken up a lot of air here. I would like to hear your thoughts about what, some of the things that Alex had to say about Cade Cowell and then perhaps some of what Jabo shared with us in the press conference tonight as well.
Yeah, so Cade felt, we've been talking that, particularly in the last game, he talked to us about some of the tactics around Cade. And how they kind of went to like a 3 in the back in order to try to like get the ball to the outside and then be able to like hit the ball into space where Cade can run onto it. Tonight, I didn't find that they were they definitely weren't doing it. So I don't think like that was a key part of the game plan. And the benefit of that was that Cade felt a lot more connected with the rest of the team. Like it wasn't just Cade by himself on this island, trying to create stuff, which I really don't like with him because, just to kind of repeat a little bit, but you weren't here in the last show, Phillip. What we were saying is that the problem is when Cade is kind of by himself and then he turns the ball over, because normally he gets doubled when he's off by himself. The problem is no one's there to help, and it tends to create transition the other way because there's a lot of space, usually between Cade and anyone else. Tonight, it felt like he was more connected. And so when he talks about Cade having defensive responsibilities and improving in his defensive side, like that only happens in situations where Cade's being connected to the rest of the team is part of the game plan. And in a situation where you throw him out on an island, you're kind of asking him to just play 1v1. And if he loses the ball, he's going to have to try to race back and try to win that ball back, which is not really something that he does. And not something that he's actually very good at. Benji, on the other hand, much better at it. Espinoza as a winger, also very good. Actually, I would say Espinoza in some cases exceptional with that. So the issue here is, what is the right way to be able to get Cade Cowell into the game and engage? And I personally like it when Cade is connected with everyone else rather than Cade is isolated and they're trying to create 1v1s for him. I get his ability to run at people. He showed that off a little bit in the last game. I just don't think the end product is really what the Quakes are looking for.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I'm definitely picking up on the integration, the full integration of Cade Cowell into the team and him not just playing on an island. I think that's something I definitely picked up tonight that we've seen a lot more as compared to other performances that he's had this season. If you have any thoughts on the Jabo presser as well, I'd be interested to hear it, Jamin. And then I think it'd be cool to take a couple questions from the folks on YouTube.
Jabo's always great. He's kind, thoughtful. I voted for him for the Media Good Guy Award. I don't know if anyone cares if I say that out loud or not. Just because he is usually the guy they trot out sometimes to talk with us in a draw or a loss. There feels like very few games where Jabo gets to come out and talk to us after a win, even if he scores. And so, I appreciate that. Obviously we've seen them do that in the past with Wando quite a bit, and also with Shea. Shea's done that a couple times this year, like he did after the loss last week as well. But Jeremy gets my Media Good Guy Award for very good reason. He also gives us thoughtful answers. I think, and something that I know the Portland media really misses is that he always would give very thought out answers. I actually had a second question for him, and unfortunately, it sounds like he had a post game thing that he had to get to, and we weren't able to fit in a second question because I was interested in whether the role of spoiler is something motivating for him or not, because facing obviously LA next week and the chance to be able to maybe knock them down from a playoff perspective, because right now they're sitting in the 7th position but just hanging on by the skin of their teeth. And then also Seattle, right now Seattle is 4 points out with Vancouver and Real Salt Lake ahead of them, and they lost to Vancouver tonight, 2-1 at Vancouver. So the Sounders have a game in hand. They might be able to make up some of that. But, if the Quakes knock down the Galaxy and then the Quakes, knock down the Sounders, as much as I would hate to see Real Salt Lake or Vancouver sneak in there, I feel like either one of those would be preferred to the Galaxy or the Sounders.
Well, either way, they're meaningful games, and I think the game against Minnesota has some meaning as well because there are playoff implications for them. I mean, they're higher up the table, but still, they're going to be jockeying for position as they get to the end of the season here. So I certainly think that the Quakes are going to go out there and compete and try to make an impact for these other teams who are in the playoff race.
If you want to pick out questions we want to talk about here?
I'll
try to find them.
Good ones. I think back at about the 10-17 mark. We have some good ones here. We have Gregory. We have Ben Perez.
Go ahead, pick one out. I'll try to grab it.
Yeah, let's go to Noah's question at 10-17. What should the Quakes do differently next season? I'll kind of kick this one off, and then I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this, considering some of the insights that you have, Jamon.
Sorry if this is supposed to be private. It says private. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like part of his name on YouTube, I think.
Sorry, Noah, if that was intended to be private to us.
Well, I think he wants us to answer the questions. So I think we're okay. Well, I think this is a big thing, is that the Quakes are going to have a different looking back line going into next season. At the left back position, we have, an opportunity to see our new Peruvian signing with Miguel Trauco. And we're also going to have Rodriguez coming into his second season with the team. But, he's had limited time this season. And then we'll finally get to see Carlos Ocapo, who is just coming off of his season over in La Liga in Spain. And so one thing that I think is going to be quite different, inevitably, is the defense. And I think that's the biggest thing that needed to be solved this season, considering how many goals the Quakes have given up. But also, I'm interested to see how they are going to shape themselves in those positions in which the opposing team is coming into the 18-yard box and attacking, and how well the Quakes are going to shape themselves. I think you pointed out earlier this season, Jamon, that the Quakes have a tendency to kind of scramble in those situations and kind of like play whack-a-mole, trying to figure out how they're going to defensively counter whatever it is the opposing team is trying to do. So what I think I would like to see, and I think what we will see from some more experienced players, and arguably players with higher levels of skill or experience in those positions, is we will see, hopefully, better defensive shape and better reactions in those situations in which the Quakes need to be responsive to the attacks, and not leaving those sorts of those gaps in the defense like we saw tonight, for example. We saw this from Marco Farfan the last time FC Dallas came and played San Jose. He was kind of creeping into those gaps in the right back position for the Earthquakes. I believe last time it was Tommy Thompson. We saw something a little bit different tonight because we had a different right back in that position. But we were seeing them clearly take advantage of that weakness in the Quakes formation. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Quakes have given up so many goals this season, because they have been vulnerable on the flanks, especially when the opposing team is working towards the end line and sending those balls back across the box, or sending them up to zone 14, which is right in front of the goalkeeper, right on the outside of the 18-yard box. The Quakes have been incredibly vulnerable in those positions. So it'd be nice to see how they're going to shape themselves when they have to quickly determine who they're going to be marking and how they're going to respond to those attacking opportunities from other teams.
Yeah, I agree. To me, the term I like to use here is collective defense. The Quakes still defend individually when they get into trouble down in the box. And a good example of that is, I was mentioning it in the Slack earlier, is it'd be a little tough to answer the question. I got the data to do it. It's not the simplest one to answer, but I'm willing to bet that the Quakes give up more shots on the sides of the box than any other team in MLS. And what I don't mean is bad angle shots. I mean like ones that are actually pretty good angles that are going to keep JT guessing as to whether they're going to go near or far post, because they could potentially go either. Teams just get into those spots, and what happens is the fullbacks get kind of sucked inside, and the ball goes across, and it feels like the opponent is standing over there all by themselves, and everyone forgot that maybe someone might be heading toward the back post. And they're alone. And it happened 3 more times tonight. Someone, I think it was Asher, if I remember right, in the Slack said, well, this is what happens when you don't have real fullbacks playing fullback. Bingo. So you're right. I think the big change is now you're going to get players whose job has been for their career to play fullback in the fullback positions. And the thing that I think Lucci's going to bring from the U.S. national team, or at least I really hope so with fingers crossed, is that ability to be able to help them understand collectively how they need to be able to defend and move together around the box area. I think that is something that Berhalter's national team does really well. And while, you don't have Miles Robinson back there and Aaron Long and some of the other players that he has, at the same time, that collective mentality, I think, is really important. And then we've talked about it, getting the right six in front to be able to protect zone 14. And the thing that the six does, so most teams, and a little bit of where goals come from here, most teams don't anymore give up a lot of goals from zone 14 or even a lot of assists from zone 14. Why? Because the game has adapted to that with very strong sixes. So defensive midfielders who know how to neutralize zone 14 force teams to have to find other ways to be able to get the ball into the box rather than very directly down the center of the pitch. That's not the Quakes. The Quakes give up a lot in zone 14, and they shouldn't give up a lot in zone 14. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't have the right defensive midfielder at this point in their career. Judson was that guy, no longer that guy. We saw a bit of that tonight. It gets sucked out, also makes really weird decisions with the ball when he gets it around the goal.
Every time we went up, Jamon, I was shaking my head.
But defensively, what he was in 2019 is not what he is today. Same thing with Eric Rometti. Like, they both serve a purpose. They might be decent backups because you do need some depth, and I wouldn't mind having either one of them as a backup next season. But you really got to take care of that six. I maybe would like to see one more player come in and really challenge on the center back side. Rodriguez and Nathan for a real true starting job. And I would like Beeson moved back over, as the backup on the other side. So, that's what I would like to see. I like to see some depth back there. I would like to see cohesion back there. I want to see everyone moving together. I want to see teams dropping into a 4-4-2 with, defined lines and compressed lines, where you understand like where the threats are going to be able to come from. Rather than what we see today. The Quakes are probably the worst team giving up goals in transition in MLS. They've got to figure that out. On the other side of the equation, Philadelphia Union is who the Quakes want to be. They literally do the best job of any team in MLS at preventing transition shots from being able to happen, thereby transition goals. That's why they're probably going to set a record for fewest goals against in this league. So, if you want somewhere to look for inspiration, the Philadelphia Union is, again, another a team that the Quakes should be looking at for inspiration as to how to make some changes and be able to stop those types of dangerous transitions.
Yeah.
If they can really cut those down, I think, with this attack, if this attack can repeat, that's not easy, but if this attack can repeat, what they did this year, next year, guess what? The Quakes will be in the playoffs.
I would suggest anybody who wants to nerd out on that kind of stuff, go watch some of the extended highlights from the Philadelphia Union's matches this season. I mean, they really put a beat down on some of the teams in MLS. I mean, especially like your DC United, right? They had a big win against them, and there are some other results too that are just like massive. They're American football scores, basically.
Yeah, really.
I highly recommend going to check that out.
Actually, got a 0-0 draw today, but that's okay because they didn't give up goals in that one either. So.
There you go.
You go on the road in Atlanta and don't give up any goals, you're doing okay.
Let's move to another question here. I like to pivot to another topic because we've been talking a lot of like tactics and players and positions and whatnot during the show today. 1025 Ben Perez asks, besides winning, what do you think the Quakes need to do to regain the support from the massive fan exodus from this year? And I really like this question because I hear a lot of different answers from a lot of different folks in regards to this. I know my buddy over at Quakes After 90, Dom Skipper, likes to talk about this a lot because he believes in a sort of, I don't know what you call it, like organic building of a squad. He's not into bringing like the big stars into a team. He doesn't necessarily think that's what's necessary. I know some folks who have been involved in the supporters groups for the team. I have, your casual fans who like to go and enjoy the game. Really, I don't know. In my opinion, Jamon, I just really think that first and foremost, the team has to put up competitive the club has to put a competitive team on the field. That's like the most important thing if you want people to come into the stadium. I mean, it is not an end all be all, right? We've seen incredible FC Dallas teams continually play in an empty stadium, way up there in Frisco, Texas, where nobody wants to go out and commute and go watch their team. But the Quakes have what is ostensibly a downtown stadium in San Jose. At least they play in San Jose, right next to the airport, right? So it's not difficult to draw people to the stadium. So to go to the question, first and foremost, they got to win games. They got to put out a team that is fun to watch. I think at times we saw that with Matias Almeida and what he brought early on with the team. The Quakes had a really long string of sellout matches, and that was part of that was when Matias Almeida was coach. I mean, we even saw that when Mikel Stari was coach, right? We saw when Dominic Kinnear was coach. But putting together a winning squad is going to make a big difference. And in terms of like marketing and stuff, I feel like the Quakes are almost there in a lot of ways. We're seeing a little bit more in their social media presence, right? They are one of the higher rated social media teams for the past couple seasons when you compare them to the other.
They've won awards. They've won awards. They're one of the top in TikTok as well.
And I think it's great. And one of the things I really like about it is like their connection to it, and it's real. That's what I really like about it. I think that's something that has to continue. Here's an example. Like when they were putting together the creator kit, we saw them collaborating with like Tsunami, right, which is a hardcore band out of the Bay Area. We saw them working with folks who have roots and pride in being from San Jose or being from the Bay Area. And I think the team has to continue to do that. And then I think kind of going to your point with Philadelphia, Jamon, I think that's kind of a next step here. One of the great things that the Quakes have is a history in the area, right? The team has been around since 1974. I mean, in different iterations. We had the NASL Quakes, and then we had the indoor soccer Quakes, and then we had the clash of the early MLS days. And then we had the earthquakes from 2000 to 2005, and then being brought back in 2008 and having a little bit of their presence in the East Bay. So there's a lot of history for this team. There's a lot that draw people. We were talking about generational, right? I mean, that's one of the big issues. That's been one of the huge issues for MLS over the years and drawing fans to the games. It's not like Major League Baseball, right, where you literally have like over a century worth of fans and you have generations and generations of fans. So like no matter how bad the Red Sox are, people are going to show up to Fenway to go see the Red Sox play, right? Same thing with the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Giants. I think that the Quakes kind of have that going for them at this point. We're talking a couple of generations, perhaps 3 generations of fans with the team. The only thing that I could really think of at this point to keep that going, to keep people coming back, is to win games.
I'm going to say that Ben kind of answers his own question here. I don't think their community relationship is as good as those of us who see the things going on social media and everything is as good as they think it is. Here's what I would actually really kind of change about it. I would be going into the youth clubs in the area, and I would do just a massive blitz. I would be sending out players. I would be sending out Lucci. And particularly, because he's bilingual, so he can have a greater impact. And he's impressive to talk to. And I would also just arm them with free tickets and all kinds of stuff. And I would go out there and I would try to like rebuild a trust and a connection between the Earthquakes and the youth soccer club and their parents and that community, because those are the ones that have the money to be able to come in and be able to get the season tickets and be able to bring players into games. We used to have parades of youth players and such like that. I don't know if they've still done that because they haven't been to very many games this year, but it felt like that kind of dropped off. And part of that was COVID. And I think some of the restrictions around that were put, on the team in the stadium. But I would like to see, a lot of that kind of come back where there is a lot more youth players in the stadium, filling up a lot of those seats. I think the kids bring a lot of energy, and I want to see a lot more of that. And then on the second part is I think that Lucci is really trying to create a connection also to the supporters groups. One of the things that we've been told is that Lucci has invited the supporters groups to come out and see a practice. Well, the more that the supporter groups, I think, feel connected with the team, the more that the team is giving to the supporters groups, the more I think the supporters groups themselves can potentially grow. Yes. Does it require winning? in order to really kind of get people to keep coming back. Absolutely. But for me, those are the two things that I would really like to see, is a lot of connectivity into the youth soccer side, and really try to invest in the supporters, both of them. Both, and I say both of them. I know there's more than two, but what I mean is Seismic Union on the one side with the Lobina. You got the brand new stands that are going to go up for the ultras and the area around the ultras. Like the ultras feel like they're dwindling to me and have been for years. It's, you have to somehow invest into that so that, there's going to be the ability to grow both sides of the stadium. I would like to see a lot of growth in both of those kinds of communities. And the supporters culture is really important, I think, to energizing the fan base and also being part of the outreach of the club to the community. A lot of them do some, these supporter groups do a lot of really great work from a community side of things. And we're seeing the clubs start to spotlight them a little bit more. And I think that's great. So spotlight more and more of that community work that they're doing, integrate it into what the club is doing, and really kind of improve that community outreach. And I think that's how you build that community relationship, is on the backs of those two parts of the club, the youth soccer and the supporters.
I do agree with that. I just don't think it should be a keystone necessarily of how they're going to grow. I mean, because it kind of sounds like your view here, Jamon, is that is an absolute necessary part that perhaps needs to be built around. Like, you need to have the youth and the community aspect and these local clubs. But I have seen that fail in MLS as well. I mean, to go back to Dallas once again, I know that was something that was a big issue with Dallas. We saw it with the Colorado Rapids. That's, I would say, especially in the early 2010s. We saw it with the Columbus Crew. So here's another question I would pose to Ben is like, which clubs have you seen that have gone through those struggles? How have they recovered and brought fans back into the stadium? Because there are some clubs we can point to that have had resurgences. And yes, everything Jamon said is right. All of that has been a part of the resurgence. But I think there is another factor. And it's not just winning. That is a very big part of it. But it's like, what is the team doing on the field? What kind of signings are they making to get people encouraged to come to the stadium as well? So again, FC Dallas has started to put butts in seats this season. The Colorado Rapids are one of the best examples. I don't know if that correlates with their signing of Tim Howard, or when they brought Kellen Acosta on board, or some of the other players, or it could be when they started winning matches last year, right? The Rapids were one of the better teams in the league, and they were bringing in fans. So just another thing to think about. I would go and look at some of those squads who had.
By the way, I kind of disagree that winning is the only way. I think it does. There's a certain amount of winning that is necessary in order to be able to bring the fans out for anything other than like the big event, at like the first game of the season or the Cali Classico. But correlation wise in MLS, it's less winning than you think it is. It really is the connection to the community that is first and foremost, along with the winning, then grows that whole thing. So you have to do both. It's not just one or the other, it's both.
Yes. Totally agree with that point. And I think that's kind of what I was getting at, Jamon, because I do agree with your point. I just think there is another aspect to it. It's a piece of the puzzle for me, because if you're just going in and you're completely like astroturfing, and the New York Red Bulls are the best example. When they brought in Rafael Marquez, when they had Thierry Henry, like when they had these players that are marquee signings for any club in the league, and they played incredibly, and the Red Bulls were making the playoffs, they still were not filling up Red Bull Arena. Like, the wins weren't enough. And I think the reason why is because, for one, they were playing in Harrison, New Jersey. They had these, just kind of like semi ties to New York City, and they had a couple of cool shots where, Thierry Henry is playing soccer up on a rooftop while having, some cool music or whatever playing behind him, and creating these cool videos. But otherwise, like, there was no actual connection to the community. So I do agree that aspect is incredibly important as well. And while, yes, I think winning for me is probably the most important thing, I don't think it's the only factor. It's a piece of the puzzle. So yeah, I'm kind of disagreeing with what Jim.
I think winning gets back the fans you already had. Yeah. Community brings in new fans.
I agree with that. Yeah,
it's got to be both.
The Quakes have a lot, like I said, there's a lot there generationally that the Quakes have to work with. There are a lot of older Quakes fans who I think are willing to come out, or willing to bring their kids or their grandkids out to the game. And I think it's really important that the Quakes continue to have those strong ties to the community.
You know what they should do? You know what they should do, Phil? maybe they should start a Patreon and invite people to a gigantic Slack where they can really kind of voice their frustrations and their opinions and really start to try to build a community. Maybe one that's got really cool scarves like this one right here that I've been wearing for the show, covering up the fact that I'm wearing a Seattle Kraken, little jacket thing underneath here. So that way I can go out in the community and people don't realize that I'm from California necessarily.
Okay.
Immediately realize like, oh, definitely from California or from Chicago, worse, right?
Oh, Jesus. I don't know. I can't really comment on that. I will say for only $5 a month, you can join our Slack that Jamon is referring to. Ben, one of the folks who we were just talking to right now, whose question we answered, is on the Slack, so he can speak to that. It is a place where you can go and have a great conversation with other folks who are heavily invested and involved in the community. But one of the cool things about the Patreon is that if you don't want to join the Slack, if you don't want to pay the $5, which is a great option, by the way, for $2, you could still get early access to a lot of the material that we post on quakesepicenter.com. So I would highly suggest at least checking out the Patreon, seeing what's available there. Go check out our website. It's really great. We have a ton of
it's true, and everyone in the Slack should already know this. I've said it a dozen times, but anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I have no comment about that. So, you're a Quakes fan. I still accept you and love you, Jamon. There's no issue there. So, but going back to quakesepicenter.com, we have a ton of great writers. Jamon and Ane and Colin, all the materials on there. You've seen them all on the show before. We have Asher Cohn, who is an incredible writer, has a lot of great material. Prior to coming over and working with us, he's had a lot of respectable work as well. You can go check that out. And we also have Robert Jonas, who is like royalty when it comes to journalism and Quakes. He's been doing this for a long time. He has a lot of experience and he has a lot of great insights, and you can catch him here on this show as well. So make sure you check out quakesepicenter.com. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Quakes Epicenter. I don't know if you got the banner for that one there, Jamon. But
which one are we doing here? I don't know anymore.
About Twitter and Instagram. If you want to follow,
but let me do this. Let me definitely tell people how they can follow you as well, because I don't think we've had the personal ones up tonight.
I retweet occasionally, and occasionally I'll put out a tweet. But at Phil, this is Phil. If you want to follow me, I appreciate that, Jamon. Thank you. And Jamon is at Jmore Quakes. There you go. Good timing. I would like to offer, Jamon, if you have any other questions that you saw there in the YouTube chat that you want to answer before we get.
Well, there's been a lot of great comments too, so it's there's been a lot here.
You're finding out
if someone quickly wants to put a question that they've already asked back down there, and so we can catch it again. We'll try to let's see if we can answer maybe one more question.
We're at that part of the season right now, that part of the year, I should say, that's really exciting for a lot of sports fans, because we have Major League Baseball inching towards the postseason. We have the start of the NFL.
When the Mariners are halfway good this year, this is people are excited up here.
About the Mariners.
Yeah, but they never make the playoffs. People in Seattle are like, wait, there's still a baseball team here and they're good this year? Okay.
Griffey and Jay Buhner and all those great guys that play for that. But yes, and Ichiro, right, in the latter.
Ichiro, yeah.
Probably one of the few players that I would actually get a jersey of with his last name on the back from another team.
Okay.
Would be
interesting.
Ichiro. Always respected that guy. But
I did have the Ken Griffey game for my N64 back in the day, so there was.
Yeah, I had the Super Nintendo ones. I had both. I had the first one, and then one of my friends had the second one, Winning Run, and we used to play that. So
Brian Hoovler is asking us to answer a negative question, like which player would you release first in the off season? So Brian, you know that we have to talk to players and people. Right?
Yeah. I don't. You do. I'm just good at. You actually have to give it really.
Well, if there's a player who has not played for the first team this season, why are they in the team? If they're not under 20 homegrown, So drop release them quickly. So just go figure out who that is, and that's how I would release it. No, you're missing depth. If you have players who basically are just playing Quakes 2 games and they're not seeing the field at all for the first team, and they're not a new young homegrown that you've just signed and you're trying to develop using the second team in order to get their games, of course we're talking about the homegrown signings we've done in the past year with that comment. That's pretty much where I would start.
Well, I would say that there are a lot of players in the midfield, a lot of young players in the midfield. So that would be the kind of the area that I would look at first. Would be in the. I know we've had our defensive woes this season, so maybe a lot of people have a tendency to kind of look towards that. But I would say the midfield is an area because I would like to see more of Nico Chikaris, and then hopefully we'll get to see more of Asamani and a couple of the other guys. Maybe even Haji, if who knows if that's going to be viable or not going into next season. So I don't know. I'll say a couple of names. I think really you kind of already hinted at it. The sixth position, Jamon, guys who perhaps we could have for depth, but perhaps would be better on another team at this point in their career. And I'm thinking of guys like Judson and Remedi. Like that would probably be who I would consider maybe rotating out and allowing some of these younger guys to come in, and perhaps even bringing in somebody else to play in the sixth position who kind of fits the team a little better at this point. And that's nothing really against Remedi or Judson. I mean, they've put in a lot of good time with the team. They've got fantastic skill sets, but those would be the guys I would consider maybe rotating out and having other guys come in and get their opportunities under new coach Luchi Gonzalez. So.
Yeah. So who is out of contract that we would bring back? Not a lot actually, because the Quakes have done so. One of the strategies we've talked with Chris Leach about this before is he's actually kind of set this team up so that the coach could come in, a new coach could come in and potentially really turn over the roster, and they wouldn't have a bunch of long-term agreements in place. So actually there's really not that many players that we know of that are just, like option players or are out of their final one. But of the ones that we think are in their final year, this is based on what we think, so we don't really know this, would be Remedi, Judson, Salinas, Thompson, and maybe Christian Espinoza. Said Haji probably. I'm going down lower in the roster. Jack Skane probably. A couple other option. There's maybe some 2023 options with Marie, who I think only got a year plus an option. Bersano a year plus an option, we think, or maybe that was reported. Grey Goose a year plus an option. Things like that. Of everyone there, I mean, if Christian Espinoza is out of contract, you got to bring him back.
Yep, that's my choice.
He's the obvious one, but I don't know that he's out of contract, so let's just go somewhere else. You bring back either Remedi or Judson, whichever one will fit better into the system, and I would just leave that decision up to Lucci.
And not both.
Not both. I would not bring back both.
Yeah, that's a good call. I like that one.
Okay,
cool.
So it's kind of positive, kind of negative. One's out, one's in, but I'm not saying which one. How about that?
Good for you. A couple other things. We were talking a little bit before the show started, college football. So for those of you, I'm actually interested to hear if anybody in here actually follows college football, because for me, one of the things that was very attractive about soccer when I first started watching it, I would say about 2009, 2010, because I didn't grow up watching soccer, was the similarities we see with the fan bases in college football. I think the closest that we get to the European football experience, the European soccer experience, if you would, is what we have here in college football. And so I spent a lot of time today watching college football, even more than I did watching like MLS or anything else. My beloved Cal Bears lost to Notre Dame, who hadn't won a game yet this season, even though they started off the season ranked. I had the Fresno State USC game on. I don't know if that game is over, but growing up in the Central Valley, big Fresno State fan as a kid. So I'd be curious to see if anybody even cares about college football in the chat. I see Go Bears. I see F the Bears. NFL baby, let's go Niners. Okay, so we got 49ers fans, of course. Perfectly neutral. Okay. Minnesota. Okay. Anyway, Jamon, do you watch college football at all?
No, because I didn't go to a college that had a football team, so I don't really feel a connection to any of them. No. But
Northwestern
national championship game. I actually used to go to Northwestern games because I had a lot of friends at Northwestern.
Cool. Right on. All right. Well, that was a little tangential, but I thought I would ask. Okay, there we go. UT, A&M. Cool. All right. Well, I think we're about at the end of the show.
Wow, someone's digging into Montana games.
There we go.
I mean, you got to be a real hardcore to watch. I don't know, Montana, Idaho, North and South Dakota. If you're watching them play college football, you're hardcore.
Hey, if you're from out there, Jamon, that might be the only thing that you have to go see. So I totally.
I have been to a UW game, and my son and I actually want to do the Washington State-Washington game, which we will actually be about 30 minutes from the campus for Thanksgiving weekend. So we are very interested in that. My son's actually interested in checking out Washington State. He's a senior this year, and it's if he's going to go to a Pac-12 school, it would. It's either Washington or Washington State. So,
all right, well, go Cougs. Hey, Arky says the new
Apple Cup.
State University jersey is black and blue. I did not know that. I'll have to go
Ooh,
check.
very interesting.
Might have to cop one of those. Okay, Jamon, do you have any final thoughts?
Someone loves our guts. I think they mean guys, but they love our guts too.
What do you think, Jamon? We're at about an hour and 5 minutes. I would love to continue chatting, but I know that it's really late.
Yeah, I always tell my wife, like, oh, it's a 1-1 draw. This won't be a very long show, right? We'll be out kind of quickly.
I think so.
Alex and I timed it perfectly to an hour last week, so that was kind of amazing.
That's my fault.
Yeah. But we're taking questions, so that's
yeah, it's been fun. Well, I mean, what do? You're at the end of the season. The Quakes have 3 games left. They're out of the playoffs. We have the Cali Classico coming up. Hopefully, we'll have some pretty good coverage of that from Quakes Epicenter.
Yeah. Let's talk about Cali Classico real quick. So we are hoping to be able to do a post-game show on the field. Now, obviously, I think there are fireworks. We're still doing the fireworks, even though it's not 4th of July. I think that's all true, right? So the intention is to try to do it on the field. We're also thinking about trying to simulcast this onto Twitter, because we just thought, like, for people with their phones while they're waiting for fireworks and things like that, or walking to and from their cars, like maybe it would work a little bit better to have it on Twitter. So if you have an opinion on that, come into the Slack. If you're on the Slack, let us know if like Twitter, if we have put it on Twitter, if it'd be more convenient for you than YouTube. Ideally, we'd be able to do both. And A thinks we can. Playing around with it a bit, so we got to figure it out. Where can I buy one of the cool scarves? Yes, shop.quakesepicenter.com. Thank you, Ben Perez. I think he's already bought one, but I appreciate him asking the question. Anyway, so shop.quakesepicenter.com. Still more scarves in inventory. Please help Ane out so he doesn't have to keep them in his house, and buy one from us if you have not yet gotten a scarf. So yes, we are planning some special thing for Cali Classico. I am not going to be there myself because my parents' 50th anniversary, as I shared last week. So I will be traveling, but I believe Robert and Alex and Phil, if you're going to be at the Classico,
yeah,
like you need to slide your way in there. You need to be a part of that. Yeah, so if we can get a 3-man down on the field, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we got that. And then, by the way, of course, I will be at Decision Day, of course, since I'm close to here. Even if I have to miss my son's club game, I will be at Decision Day. And we will have our final show of the season, maybe a wrap-up show. We'll have to decide if that's the wrap-up show or if we will do an actual wrap-up show. But we will have Decision Day for you, hopefully with a chance to prevent the Seattle Sounders from going to the playoffs. I think that would be.
I certainly hope so.
If you got to miss the playoffs, it's a good way to go out if you can keep them out of it too, right?
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. All right, I want to invite everybody to like and subscribe to our channel.
Oh yeah, please do that.
Yeah.
Which direction is that? Is that way? Okay.
Like this video.
There you go. That looks better.
And make sure you turn on your notifications. So that way, after every match or midweek, because we put out content midweek as well, and we will be putting out content during the off season. If you turn on your notifications,
in fact, we almost only put out content during the off season. To be honest, we don't have a show, so then we got to get everything out in articles. That's the way.
That's right. That's right. No, well, it's not right, but it's halfway true.
It's kind of true.
If you go to YouTube, which a lot of you are on already, but if you're listening to this in podcast form right now, after the fact, go over to YouTube and you can find a lot of the interviews that Jamon has with other beat writers and journalists who work around MLS. And there's a lot of really great content and honestly some really impressive journalists that you've talked to, especially lately, Jamon. I've really enjoyed the content that I've seen on there. I invite everybody to go check that out. There's a lot of really great stuff. So make sure you like and subscribe. And make sure you turn on those notifications and join us over at the Quakes Epicenter Patreon Slack. and we look forward to seeing you there. And I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and we will see you after the Cali Classico. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.